Good evening. I'm Dr. Greenbrier Almond, and thank you for joining us on our program, Tender Loving Care. Each week on Channel 3, I'm happy to talk about this interface between Christianity and medicine. And tonight, we're going to talk about a big issue in our community, and that's school violence and bullying. And I want to talk about the various aspects of it, how we can interdigitate both Christianity and medical care to that subject. I know that there are experts within our school system, of course, who deal with this at the principal level, the vice principal level, the coaches, the teachers, the school nurses, and the counselors at school, and they all have a share in helping us deal with this. But tonight we can talk a little bit about the purpose of our program, that interface between Christianity and medicine. I'm going to make reference tonight, as I have several times this year, to a manual that's been published, Preventing Bullying and School Violence. This is by Stuart W. Twemlow, a doctor and a medical doctor, and Frank C. Sacco, a PhD doctor of philosophy. And this is published by the American Psychiatric Association. By longevity and by experience, I'm an elder fellow of that organization. I'm a life fellow, and appreciate the opportunity that I've had to help people through psychiatric medicine. And I find that this is a good manual. Certainly it's going to help us look at this tonight, and I want to follow an outline that they've put together. And you might disagree, you might say there's another form of violence in the school or in the home, but we're going to talk about 5 different ways that this comes out, and of course the particular ways that we can deal with that. First of all, there is the repetitive school disruption in the form of illegal and aggressive behavior. This is actually addressed by the new school behavioral policy that we've also talked about on our program, and that's available on the State Board of Education website if you want to look that up in detail. But repetitive disruptive behavior. The new policy allows for us to gradually escalate not only how we deal with that, punishment and behavior modification and changes in classrooms and things like that, all the way up to expulsion from school. What I commonly see, and each of these 5 cases that we're going to talk about tonight, I've seen in patients even this day in my medical practice. So what we're talking about is common and down home. You know, this is not mysterious. The pattern that usually emerges if a child is repetitively violent or aggressive in the school setting is that they have been receiving that type of behavior at home. More often than not, it's an addictive parent. We have a huge problem, no surprise, with drugs and alcohol in our community and in West Virginia. We've had like over a 500% increase in methadone deaths, overdoses, and opioids and so forth in West Virginia in the last 6 years or so. It's just one example, but folks who are on a substance of abuse say things, do things, act out in violent ways, are disinhibited that impact their children and set up a pattern that the children then fall into. And of course, as professionals, teachers, principals, doctors, and others, we have to help the child and help the parent also. So that's one form of behavior, and I've seen that today in my office. Acute cases of child aggression or the child as a victim. This is also a pattern that has come out, and this is a child who's been in foster care, multiple CPS involvement, and there's limited social support. There's usually a poverty, homelessness, domestic violence, something like this going on in the home. A little bit different from just the drug-abused parent, but it's along that same line. And so the child has a pattern of being an acute child aggressor or victim. What the difference is here, if you want to split hairs a little bit, is this is early on. The first time you see a child being aggressive, think about something happening in the home. In fact, as a doctor, we don't make the diagnosis of a child being having its own problem until we know what's happening in the home. It happens in the school. This is where the behaviors manifest. It also happens in the home. We need to know about that. More often than not, it also happens in the community. If a child is let loose in Walmart or some store, they may wreak havoc. If a child is in church, they also may be disruptive to the process. So, but this is addressing it early on when you first see that child being aggressive. So it's a sort of a stair step we're climbing here. A second pattern is the highly submissive victim or the aggressive young child. And there's really no state agency involved, but we have many children who only come to see a doctor. I saw a lady today who's in her middle age, and she had problems in her home from the very early age. She's only talking about it now. In fact, she's maybe too submissive to the problem. How did it manifest itself? Well, she's employed, doing well. She wore a smile at work. People thought that she was a great lady, and she is, but she was hiding dark secrets. And so that comes out as a child that's too highly submissive as a victim. And then, of course, the other side of that, if there's a jealous male in the home, the father, the stepfather, the boyfriend, and the child watches his behavior, then they not only are submissive most of the time, but they can turn violent just at a drop of a hat. I was sitting next to a child, trying to relate to the child, and the child had a pencil, and so we were passing the pencil back and forth and just connecting, and just without announcement, the child took the pencil and stabbed it into my hand, and it shocked me and it hurt me. No permanent damage, but this was a submissive child that turned violent, and we were. I was talking to the child, the parent, and so forth, because of the issues of abuse within the home, sexual abuse, and issues like that that are hard for the child to talk about, but it comes out at times in this violence. So we see that kind of violence in the school. There's the school, the student with self-injurious behavior. I'm seeing more and more of that as we have more and more autism in our society. One child in 88, current number, may be autistic. And so a classroom, say the size of Academy with 600 students, may have 4, 5, 6 autistic kids. These children can do self-injurious behavior. They can hurt themselves in various ways. Sometimes there's an ongoing depression in the parent of a child who's injuring themselves. We see a lot of children. My daughter's a psychiatrist and works in student health at the University of Michigan. So she's following her dad's footsteps, but way up the ladder of success, and doing it at a wonderful university. But her experience is that she's seeing more and more students cutting on themselves. Of course, we start to look for depression, not only in that student, but also perhaps in the parent or other key people in their lives. In other words, anger turned inward, the old definition of depression, and it results in self-injurious behavior. And I'm touching the surface on these. There are many other aspects to each of these topics, but I want you to understand where we need to go as a community to help out our students. The schools cannot do it alone. When I first went on the school board, I was handed a book, and that was the title of the book, Schools Cannot Do It Alone. We need the community support. And of course, we need the church's support. We need the family support. This is a societal, community, cultural issue we're talking about. The next one, a pattern of violence and trouble of a student, is the truant child or the dropout child. And we have been alerted to this by the Supreme Court Justice Robin, blocking her name, but anyway, she is running up for election this year as the Supreme Court Justice, and she has gone around the state, including Upshur County in the spring, talking about truancy and dropout rate. And we know, sadly enough, that something like 80% of the inhabitants of our prisons and our jails dropped out of school. They were truant first and they dropped out of school. It's a big issue that we're even addressing in the judicial system. But the pattern begins in school, in grade school, in junior high or middle school, and in high school. And it often is that there's a pattern where the child is beginning to be truant. Maybe there's substance abuse, maybe there's mental illness. I was talking to a child today that began to drink in the home at 7 years of age. Talking to another child today whose family pattern has mental illness, bipolar illness, manifest in the child at an early age. Some truants and dropouts represent that type of problem. It takes a multi-service approach to this. And in our school system, of course, they have to attend school. 5 unexcused absences can result in some type of corrective action. Maybe the courts can fine the parent, or other things can happen. So we're taking that as a serious issue. Sometimes you change the behavior first, get the child in school, keep the child in school, then you can get to the bottom of the problem. Just like treating someone with a substance abuse problem, you can say, I can help you figure out why you abuse alcohol, but you have to stop drinking first. You see, that's behavioral change first. So let's look at a little bit about this from a standpoint then of how we do help. The basic issue, and I agree again with this text I'm following, Preventing Bullying and School Violence. They've organized themselves very well, and it's a book that any mental health provider would have written if they had sat down to write a book. The first comment that they make about this, when we begin to clinically take it apart and try to solve the problem, is schools have become the center and the most natural setting for intervening in a problem like this, violence in our society. This happened to me. I mean, my first awareness of this, having finished school a long time ago, 46 years out of high school in Buckhannon, Upshur. But when we were having the war in the former Yugoslavian nation, as it was falling apart and attacking each other, and I went to a meeting. I heard a psychiatrist, a child psychiatrist, who had been there, said that what was happening, the children, as the bombs were falling on their houses and the parents were being killed and everything was disruptive in their life, they went back to the schools as a safe place. And indeed, the teachers came back to the schools, the principals. The children met in the schools. It was a safe place. It was a community place for them to come. And that's no mystery. But likewise, if you want to say this, the problems we're going to see manifest in violence, it will be manifest in the school, but the problems the child brings to school with them, things that have happened in their home life and in their community of environment. And that's no mystery. First, there's an interlocking system, too, for the child, a social system. So often when we get together to solve this, at least I'll use the model that we use here at Appalachian Community Health, and I'm sure all of other mental health centers use the same model, or doctors use this, and child diagnostic centers. We get together the principals, that is the family members, and sometimes there's a grandparent or whoever is helping to raise the child. We get together the school officials, maybe a social worker, a nurse, other people that may have been involved, a doctor, a minister, and we look at the situation in total. We can't solve it without getting all the pieces of the pie together. A third comment about how we go about solving this is that the internet itself has sort of collapsed all of this together into one ball. The children, of course, are not supposed to be on their computer texting each other or talking to each other in the school setting, but children talk at night on the internet, and they and all settings they have this service. So it sort of collapses everything. What is a school problem is a home problem, is an internet problem. We haven't solved that yet, but we need to be addressing that. And of course, again, as a parent, the parents have responsibility to limit their children. I say to the kids, and they don't like to hear it, we want less screen time and more green time. And I try to get a goal in therapy to be on the TV and the internet or the computer 2 hours a day or less. And children will fight you on this one because they want to be on 6 hours or more. But 2 hours or less is a doable goal. That allows, if there is homework that the schools can put up on the internet or on the computer, the child can do that. If they have to type something on Microsoft Word, they can have screen time and do their homework. They can also perhaps chat with their friends and do some things like that. Maybe watch a favorite TV show, but 2 hours or less, anything having to do with the screen. And let's get kids back outside again and playing and doing things like that. That's part of the internet solution to our problem. Another idea that's talked about, and again, no mystery, these are just things that you could think about, but we want to bring this together, especially as we begin with a school here in just a few more weeks. We need a treatment philosophy that we want to impact the child's behavior first. Children can learn by just obeying the rules. I learned in 4-H camp, for example, to line up straight. We had to line up straight as to who went first for a meal. If you never lined up straight, and I don't like to queue up anyway in lines as an adult, but I jumped out of a line at the post office today and did something else and came back when there was no line. But anyway, in 4-H camp, we had to line up, and if the Delaware tribe that I was a part of had the straightest line, then we could go in and eat first. So that's an immediate reward. And pretty soon we learned how to line up. We learned how to put the smallest child up front, the tallest child in the back, and how to toe up and so forth. And our chief in Sagamore helped us. And but you can change a behavior first, and then you can turn around and deal with the feelings about it later. A child cannot be aggressive in school, cannot be truant, but we can then help the child understand why they're doing what they're doing after they stop that behavior. Another big factor is what we call mentalization. I would use an older term like reflective, or I would use a spiritual term like being meditative. And children know this. And you can ask this. I remember Professor Mao, my philosophy professor at West Virginia Wesleyan. I had enough hours to claim a minor in philosophy, and I loved it. But this reflecting, meditating, mentalizing behavior that philosophers do, Dr. Mao pointed out that a child, you take two children, one may be 2 years old, one may be 3 years old, I mean, as young as you can get them to talk a little bit, and you have two pieces of pie, and one is large and one is small, and you give the big piece of pie to one kid, and the child that got the smallest piece of pie is going to say, "That's not fair." They understood the mental concept of fairness, even at that age, 2 or 3 years of age. And of course, I took that from my philosophy class, and as I raised our two children, I always tried to divide the pie equally and everything equal as best I could. I made that known that my attempt was at fairness. And it's a good principle to live by. Other principles children catch on to, and we want to teach mentalizing or reflective thinking to children, because a child will not act out violently if they have that capacity. Why do we have so much violence in the autistic children, or the children who may be handicapped in other ways and cannot process information, those with seizure disorders or other problems like that? They may act out in violence because they don't have the words or the thoughts necessarily to express themselves, but they can learn it. Again, in my own therapy today, I had a child, and I said, treating you is like watering my garden, my flowers. I'm going to put a little water on you, and then I'm going to weed around you. We're going to change one little thing at a time, and you will grow. You'll grow up into a beautiful flower. And the child understood that, and that came from my own experience, of course, in gardening and in doctoring. And I see a lot of overlap and similarity to what I do in the garden and what I do in the office setting. So mentalizing. Another concept is failure to launch independent living in the older student. Now, this is the child who graduated from high school, maybe even went to college, maybe could not last in college, came home, maybe tried to get a job, could not get a job. Now the child is at home. we've got problems there. There's almost another stage of adolescence, a post-adolescence growth stage that has to be dealt with now, where these children will get into drugs, alcohol, all sorts of problems. And that is sad for the family. Often this is the higher socioeconomic family that this is happening to. Other children maybe who come out of school with vocational training can get a job right now as a mechanic or get in working with the rigs, working in the mines, and things like that. They go into their adult role a little better. But there are children who get stuck at that post-adolescent stage, and that can lead to a lot of violence. And it has in our community. Now, another factor is excessive pressure to perform. This is always an issue that may rupture in a destructive process for the child, whether that's a suicide attempt, violence, or something like that. So children, of course, go through developmental stages, and they're able to handle so much stress at one time in their life. They may be able to handle more stress at a later time in their life. I was talking to a man just Friday who served our country in World War II. He's now 88 years old. He was 19 years old when he was fighting for our country, fighting to free the Philippines, which I personally thanked him for because my wife is Filipino. And it was a touching story, but he had a nervous breakdown, and that was due to all the stuff that he had to do. He had to take up body parts from Americans. He had to deal with the cruel Japanese. He had so many pressures for a 19-year-old. He could not handle that. So excessive pressure is going to have an impact on a child along the way. This is often the basis of what suicide is all about. When a child's interlocking systems are not, and it does not include mentalizing, there can be a disequilibrium. In other words, I use my example of my muscle here, the biceps and triceps, and I say if the action is smooth, both muscles are equally strong. But if one muscle were weaker and one muscle were stronger, then the action would be jerky. So if a child can mentalize in school, that's great. If he can be reflective in the home, that's great. What about when he's out with his friends on Main Street, on the community? Turned loose in a mall, something like that. Is he reflective there? Probably not, but it can be taught. How about in church? He doesn't go to church. Maybe many children don't, but he should. He could. He can learn from that, and those are so that there needs to be an equilibrium in all of the child's settings for it to work. Of course, we can analyze where it works and where it doesn't, and then tackle the problem. Another issue is taking a very broad perspective on this, and that we need to consider our children, the broad view, if you want to say it that way. We have our culture is changing rapidly, and we probably are not spending enough time talking about what are the changes. I'll use obesity as an example. I certainly probably fit the pattern that I have gained a pound a year for the last 10 years. And I didn't plan to do that, but food is there in our culture. That's a change. More and more places where food is served, and there may be other changes. We have a lousy economy right now. That's a drag on our emotional health. On and on and on. You can think of these things. This all needs to be talked about, and probably around the kitchen table is a good place to do that. If we can't do it there, then there needs to be discussion groups within the community, and all these things are possible. We did a community-wide read a couple years ago, The Call of the Wild, Jack London's book. Wonderful book, wonderful concept that we did that read as a community, and people come together and talk about the same topic, adults, children, all sorts of people of the same, just part of the community talking about one common issue at a time. Very important to do. Another concept is to empower the family. Families sometimes don't feel that they have power, but they do. It's not so many years ago that the family made all the decisions about the child. Now they do share that somewhat with the school and with other authorities, but the family is still in charge. A very strong concept that if this is developed out, will reduce school violence and violence in our community. I take the most easy example is that parents used to, if it disobeyed at school, they would come home, the parents would then double the punishment. And, you know, the child knew they could not get away with something. They would hear about that, someone would call the parent before the child even got home, and the child then would be dealt with in the home, and it was accepted and it was appropriate. Another minute or two here to talk about this. So many things to do when you open a book talking about violence in the school and in our community and bullying. But it's important to get those 5 types we've talked about tonight and some of these broad interventions that we all can do, we can all be involved in. One of the goals, of course, is a peaceful day at school. And let's break it down like we do with substance abuse. You know, one day at a time, people maintain their sobriety. One day at a time, we can have a peaceful day in school. I was very happy to see along this line I think it was a full-page ad in a local paper, but it was a local mining group, and they were announcing that they have been injury-free. And I think it was a year and a half, maybe 2 years, but it was a long period of time. But the emphasis was, of course, they were injury-free every day, then every day, then every day, then every day. And the pattern built. It'd be nice to have a reward system in the school, whatever it is, whether it's a thermometer rising or whatever it is, to show how we have had a string of peaceful days in school. And children will catch on to that. Just like children, when they attend school, recognize at the end they get an attendance award, a star, or whatever they may get for perfect attendance. Pharmacology plays a role. We won't go into that tonight, but there are medicines, of course, that help deal with violence, and it depends on the cause. Learning disabilities are a big issue, and we have programs for children that can get an individual education plan, and all of those things should be offered. I think in just summary, to talk about this, there are changes in our society that are very important that we all know about. And one of the things that has come to light, if you want to go back to Columbine as a benchmark in 1999, we had the school shooting incident in Colorado, and then after that we've seen more and more of that. It came to our attention, our collective attention as a nation, with Columbine, that what was a beautiful flower, the state flower of Colorado, has forever been changed into the concept of school shooting and school violence. Well, we need, of course, to take another concept and change our own mindset. So I hope this is helpful to you. Until the next time, this is Dr. Greenbrier Almond, thanking you for joining us on our program, Tender Loving Care. We'll see you next week.